Hope everybody's doing very well. Hello, hello. Good to see so many of you joining from across the globe. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, Monday is a good day. I agree with you. I actually really like Mondays. I feel like I get all excited to get back at it. I might be the only people who likes Mondays. I get antsy when I don't work, funny enough. Right, give me a second, we'll get going. All right, everybody. Welcome, welcome. So good to see you all on today's burst of innovation. We will officially get started in about 30 seconds, but it is so good to see you all from across the globe joining us for today's 10-minute burst of innovation. Just a refresher to all of us, the point of these is to get our week going a little differently, to get those wheels turning, to drive more innovation, to work smarter, not harder, to give us that burst of inspiration and maybe some tools and maybe some insight to do our jobs a little bit better, a little bit differently, a little bit at a higher level. So that's what we're going to do today. And today, what I want to talk about is being a repeat innovator. And I want to share with you some habits and some rules that you can implement immediately to be a repeat innovator. And this comes from one of the podcasts that I recently did with Julie Holmes. I suggest that you go check it out on our podcast. If you go to our website and you click on podcast, you'll find hers. It was in the last couple of weeks, or you just search Julie, she'll come up. And we had this whole conversation about innovation, about being an innovator, and how oftentimes the mistake we make is that we wait for this kind of moment of magic, this aha. And while that sounds great, it's really not sustainable. And frankly, it's leaving your ability to perform at your peak, to perform at that higher level, up to chance. But we do not want to do that, do we? We want you to be repeat innovators. Now, if you've taken our Innovation Quotient Edge Assessment, the proprietary research-based tool that helps you discover your everyday innovator style, your unique style, then you have an incredibly solid foundation to build off of this. You have a head start to everybody else out there. We're all innovators, but we got to understand how. And we understand how, it is easier for us to unlock that part of our brain and create meaningful breakthroughs. So today, I'm going to share the clip with you from Julie where she talks a little bit about this. I want us to have a discussion about it. And then I want to share some rules and some habits that you can implement every single day. Now, I see some new people on here, so welcome, welcome. I just want you to know this is interactive. I always have the chat bar up. If you are watching this on our live stream on LinkedIn or Facebook, you got to be on Zoom to communicate with us, but you can always leave your comments after and we'll go back in. And if you're watching this now and you're like, oh, I really want to share this with Jenny, it's on LinkedIn and it's on Facebook, so you can find it there as well. And that same is true as if you miss one. I'd rather you didn't because I want the chat, but if you do. All right, I want to share my screen. While I'm sharing my screen, let me ask you a question to put in the chat bar. How many of you feel, or how often do you feel like you are like white knuckling innovation or waiting for that moment to strike, or kind of that aha, that, you know, the apple on the head kind of moment? How many of you sometimes feel like that's the case, or feel like maybe it's hard to get into it? Just put a yes in the chat bar if that's you. Yeah. Always waiting. This is not the right thing. I'm sharing my LinkedIn screen. That's awesome. Let's try that again. Tell me if you see Julie or if you see something else. This is new. Oh, yes, Mia says, yeah. This is a little bit of new tech for me, so bear with me for a second. If you're not seeing it, I'm going to go about this a different way. If you're seeing like click to exit full screen, then that doesn't help us, right? Here we go. Okay, this is not the way I want to do it, but this is how we're going to do it. So I think you can see Julie and the wheel. Hopefully you can see that. Like I said, we often wait for innovation to strike. And when we do that, we're leaving it up to chance. And the challenge with that is we actually all have this incredible ability to drive innovation all the time, every single day. So there's no reason why we need to leave it up to chance. let's listen to Julie talk. This is a little bit of a clip from my podcast.
So I love a good, idea out of the blue like anybody else, but that's a really unreliable way to
and rare
be a repeat innovator, and rare. Yeah. I mean, like lightning doesn't always strike, like even if all the clouds are rolling in, it doesn't always strike. And if you're just waiting for lightning to strike, then you're not in control of the process. And this is part of my business, right? This is how I make a living. Like these things are important to me. They're important to my family. I'm not going to rely on luck and hope as a strategy. And I work with a lot of businesses around the world, helping them evaluate their product sets, helping them figure out how to innovate and how to take things to another level. They can't sit around and hope that somebody gets hit by lightning for all kinds of legal reasons. So really, I think that great creativity can be found if you start with a good process underneath of it.
All right. Can you guys see my screen? I just want to make sure because it looks like I'm going to stop sharing and reshare. But did you hear that at least? Did you hear what she was talking about? Not wanting to wait for lightning to strike and how that doesn't help. Here we go. Let's try this. I'll figure tech out at some point. One day, one thing at a time. But I see blank book in here. Okay, that's good enough, Mia. Now you should be able to see it. So tell me if you can see it now. So what I love about what she said though is she talked about how waiting for lightning to strike is not a strategy. And if we're waiting, here's the thing. There's two things that's a problem with that. And I totally agree with Julie on this. Go back and listen to the full podcast. When we wait for lightning to strike, two things happen. One is we miss major opportunities because we're waiting for that aha to happen, right? We're just waiting and waiting. So we're missing opportunities to solve problems. We're missing opportunities that we could go after. The second thing is we actually make it harder and harder to innovate. And so those moments that we're waiting for get longer and longer apart. The reason for that is if we don't exercise our brains all the time and drive innovation, right? Our brain is like a muscle. It's not technically one, but in this way it is like one. If we're not strengthening it with innovation, rules, and habits every day, it gets weaker and weaker. So those moments get harder and harder to get to. So what I want you to be thinking about is how do I make sure that I am strengthening my innovative mind every single day? Let me give you some quick, 7 of them actually habits that can help you do that. All right, you ready for it? While I'm doing this, I want you to write in the chat bar as I'm talking about which ones you're going to do. So number 1, and these are habits, by the way, that help unlock innovation when you're stuck, because we all get stuck. It's not to say that we walk around feeling the mojo all the time, but we got to put ourselves in the mojo, right? We can't wait for it. So number 1 is flow write. And what I mean by that is just journal, but not necessarily with an intention, with a goal, with a topic. Whatever's in your head, stream it out on paper. I am sometimes amazed how my thought process jumps from, I don't know, how I slept last night to, whether I want a protein shake, to something about work, to something about Amazon books. Like it's all over the place. But my point is flow writing helps activate the brain and get you into that innovative state. So if you're ever stuck, one of my favorite things to do is just take a blank piece of paper from the printer and just flow. And for me, I find that it works a lot better when I do it on a blank piece of paper and just flow versus type. You may be different. For me, the act of writing makes a difference. So that's number 1. The other habit you can get into doing on a regular basis is do a 5-minute activity from your Everyday Innovator report. Remember, as that circle shows, all of us have different Everyday Innovator styles, which means we have 2 power triggers, and those power triggers are activated in different ways. So I'm a risk taker experiential. So for me, doing something that actually makes me a little bit uncomfortable in the morning actually helps me innovate because my risk taker side likes to be uncomfortable to innovate. That experiential means that I like to build and do and innovate motion. So for me, I might play with a little bit of Play-Doh, most mess with it. I've got Legos, right? I've got my sticky notes. For me, just being able to kind of play a little bit in the morning helps me get into that flow. It might be different for you, but in your report, you have the answer to that. Number 3 is walk, move, meditate. Movement helps increase blood flow to the brain, which helps increase innovation, creativity. So you may walk around the block, walk around your office, do a couple squats, meditate, kind of whatever works for you, but movement can be really powerful. I added meditation in there too, because for some people, actually sitting still does the same type of thing. Number 4 is coffee, tea, water. I know, weird, right? But here's the thing for me, this act of putting my hands on the warm cup of coffee just gets me going. And I know that on a daily basis, when I do that, I'm going to activate, it's a trigger for the habit that I want, the habit of innovation. Number 5, mind map, draw, or doodle. I spend a lot of time doodling on the outside of my notebooks, like the outside the lines, not because I'm an artist, far from it, but because I know that doodling helps get me into a creative state. So during the day, I will just randomly doodle all the time. Number 6, talk to someone outside the norm. What I mean by that is if you constantly work with Greg, don't just call Greg, call somebody else for 5 minutes and have a conversation. That kind of sparks new thinking and new ideas. Every now and again, in the middle of the day, I'll spend 5 minutes to catch up with somebody who I haven't talked to in a while, or at least try them. Now, here's the key with that, by the way, because I bet you're thinking, but tomorrow, what if I get stuck in a conversation for 50 minutes? I don't have 50 minutes. Here's what I do. And I really mean this. I say, hey, let's say I called Tracy. Hey, Tracy, it's been a while since we talked. I wanted to catch up. I only have 7 minutes, but you were on my mind and I wanted to say, hi, how are you? What's new in your world? And then you are maxed out at 7 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is, you get the point. But my point is sometimes just talking to someone outside the norm will help trigger you into that state. And then lastly is organize your desk or workspace. There's something really energizing about having a clean desk, or energizing about kind of rearranging some of the stuff on your desk. So just take 5 minutes to do that. Imagine for a moment, if you spent 10 minutes a day total, because that's all you need, doing 3 of these activities. Let's say you spent 5 minutes in the morning flow writing, right? Right before you started your day, every day you did that. Let's say in the middle of the day, you went for a 5-minute walk around the block or around your house or around your office. And then let's say around 3 o'clock, you did a little doodling. Think about how your everyday innovator would be unlocked so much more often. You wouldn't be waiting for lightning to strike. You would force it all the time. All right, as I'm writing these, I want to know in the chat bar, what are you thinking? What kind of, when you look at these habits, what lights you up? What makes you go, yeah, I can do that? Kind of I want a sentence or 2 about kind of where you're taking this. All right, Mia says this is super valuable. All caps, love it. Thank you. You are welcome. I'm going to really focus on these, by the way, this week, because as I was writing these out, I realized that I've gotten a little lazy about it. And I've got a lot of big challenges and a lot of big things I'm trying to make happen. So I got to make sure that I'm in the zone as often as I can possibly be. Like I said, the brain is like a muscle. You got to strengthen it. And why would we wait for lightning to strike and make it hard? And Kirby's going to doodle. So awesome. I love doodling. It's one of my favorite, it can just be triangles too. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. All right. These are habits. Again, I want you to just remember, if you picked 3 of these a day, or whichever ones speak to you, and you did that, how powerful it'd be. If you started every morning with 5 minutes of one of those activities from your Everyday Innovator report, oh my gosh, you would just unlock innovation all day long. Mia's going to talk to someone outside other than people's disciplines and routines can be applicable to us. Yes, exactly. You never know what other people are going through or dealing with or working on or whatever, how that can make you go, oh, in my world. Pick up the habits of everyday innovators and you'll be one every single day, and you will no longer need to wait for lightning to strike. Okay, let's move on to rules. So what are rules? So Julie talked about this in the podcast she's got the 3 times rule. So I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But here's the thing with rules. Rules are the thing that make sure that you pursue the right ideas. And when I mean right, I mean the ones that are good for you in the time that you're in to solve the problems or go after the opportunities. It may not be the end idea down the road, but it's right in the moment. And one of the things Julie talked about is once you do all these habits and you unlock your everyday innovator style all the time, right, then you got to go, okay, well, which of all these ideas in the bucket am I actually going to go after? So I thought about the rules that she shared and some of the ones that I use. And I wanted to share them with you because, you got 20 ideas on the table and then you go, well, which ones do I go after? So she talked about the 3 times rule. And what that means is if she hears, I wish someone would invent blah, 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 or if only I could solve this frustration. If she hears that 3 times, meaning there's a pattern, then she starts to go, oh, there's something here for me to pay attention to. So I love that rule, the 3-time rule. I like to apply that to all right, is this just me thinking this is a good idea? Or am I starting to hear this among the people that I serve? Whether that's your clients, your leaders, your customers, whoever it is, if you start to hear it repeatedly, different language each time, but you start to hear it every time, or you start to hear it repeatedly, I think that's when we have to go, maybe there's something here. All right, number 2 is one of my favorite that a designer taught me when we were working on a logo. This was a while back, a couple companies ago, and she gave me a range of logos, and there were 3 that I loved, and I could not choose. And she said, here's what you're going to do tomorrow. You're going to print them out in color. Then you're going to put it on the fridge for 24 hours, one at a time, for 24 hours. And you're going to pass by it like you do all day. And then you're going to take it off, you're going to put the next one. You're going to do it for 3 days. And she said, at the end, I want you to tell me which logo you missed. And sure enough, there was one logo that after I put it up and took it down and I put the other ones up, even though I loved them, I missed that logo. So I've started to apply the fridge door experiment to ideas that I want to pursue. And I will put that idea on a sticky note and I will put it up on the fridge. And then I will take it down. Do I miss that idea? Am I yearning for it? Does it keep coming up in my head? Gina Schreck, who I interviewed, and she owns a co-working spaces, was talking about how she's wanted to build a co-working space for a long time, but every morning she'd wake up and be like, oh my God, I can't let this idea go. I love this rule because for me, the rule is, do I miss it? That's the fridge door experiment. If I miss it, can't stop thinking about it, even when I'm presented with other opportunities, I keep coming back to this. That's how I know it's the right idea to pursue. That's my rule. The third rule that I like to follow is it fills a gap versus adds to the noise. We know that, right? Once we do some research on the things that we're thinking about, we can realize, you know what, this workflow process is just going to add complication. It's not worth it. This idea in the market is just, there's already a ton of stuff out there and there's nothing that different about mine. But if I see an idea that's like, oh, wait a minute, nobody's done this yet or hasn't done it in this way. Ooh, this is pretty exciting. I can't share the details yet, but I can tell you that I'm working on something exactly that, where I realize there's a distribution channel and my product that have never been met in the way that I want to meet them up before. And that's a gap that I think can be filled. But I had to make sure, right? I did all my research, make sure I'm not adding to the noise. So does whatever it is you're thinking of doing, does it actually fill a gap, a need, or is it just add to the noise, make things complicated, cause problems? The last one is, my last rule is in my zone of genius, not skill, right? There's a lot of skills I need to make things happen that I don't have, but is it in my zone of genius? Meaning, is it in my realm of innovation, everyday innovators, ideas, right? If it's in that realm, I'm all in. Even if it's a skill I do not have. If I come up with an idea for handles on, now since we're on refrigerator, I'm kind of looking around trying to find something. Let's say I come up with an idea for fake plants. And it makes them act like real plants, right? Like they kind of shed a little bit, they turn brown, they turn green. Kind of cool, actually, when you think about it. But am I going to pursue that idea? Probably not, because it's not in my zone of genius. I will put it in my popcorn bucket because we want to tell our brains, yes, all ideas are good to begin with, like get them all out there. That's a whole nother 10-minute burst. But for me, the idea has to be in my zone of genius. So my rules are, love the 3 times, look for the patterns. Fridge door experiment. Can I just not let it go? Do I miss it? Fills a gap versus adds to the noise, right? It's got to fill a gap or be different in some way or solve that problem versus just add complication and noise. And is it in my zone of genius? Which, by the way, is a big zone, but it's got to be in that zone. And if I have to acquire new skills to make it happen, that's great too. All right. So now that we've talked about the rules, put in the chat bar, what did these speak to you? What do you what's your aha coming out of all of this? Yes, do I miss it? Greg says, do I miss it is a big one. I'd never thought of it that way. Yeah, and here's the thing about do I miss it? I feel like that is our gut telling us there's something there. You know, oftentimes we ignore our gut thinking and it's our gut that has all the information, right? It's like A to X to B over to Y, like it's pulling all these things together and it just happens in a way that we can't always rationalize out of the gate. So we ignore it. But to me, that gut is like absolutely the like, do I miss this? There's something there, right? There's something now. It may not be in the iteration it looks right now, but there's something there. Carolyn says fills a gap versus adds to the noise. I can't tell you the number of entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs that I speak to that have an idea that ultimately just adds to the noise. And the only reason they don't realize that is because they haven't done the research, right? They haven't done the due diligence to figure it out. Now, I'm all for having the idea and then doing the due diligence. So I'm not saying you shouldn't have the idea, but you got to do your work, right? Does this really feel like really you got to put it to the test? Mia says, in my zone of genius, my wheelhouse. Yes, right. And our zones are big, right? Your zone of genius may be huge, but we know the things that aren't in there too, right? I'm not going to create this plant idea that I randomly made up because that's not my zone of genius. Now, if somebody who was going to do that came to me and said, help me innovate, make this stronger, that's in my zone of genius because I'm all about ideas and innovation, right? All right, Kirby says to the fridge, love the fridge, Kirby, put stuff on the fridge, walk by it, and then when it's gone, that's when you know, do I miss it? Is there something there? Do I really want that idea back? Put it on your computer, put it on your desk, whatever it is. All right, everybody. So remember, as Julie said, first of all, go back and listen to that podcast if you haven't already. It's fantastic. Don't wait for lightning to strike. When you do that, you're missing massive opportunities. It's not repeatable. It's not sustainable. And you make it harder on yourself. Pick 3 habits every single day. All you need is 10 minutes. And just strengthen that innovative mind. Make it something that lightning that's happening all the time. Maybe next week I'll talk about how to make sure you're letting that lightning happen in a way that your brain loves. We can talk about that next week. But get into the habit of doing the innovator habits. And number 3, once you've had all these ideas, pick rules that help you filter through and move the right ideas forward. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. So honored to be with you. I'm sure by next week I'll have the technology figured out as you can tell, the part that's not my zone of genius is some of the new tech we're trying to play with. You can't have it all. You can't win it all, right? Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, good. You have a great week too. Good. I'm so glad you all loved it. Thank you. I want to hear now what everyday innovator habits you've implemented. And I want you on the podcast. So if you're out there doing something innovative, big and small, right? Just you are finding ways to think differently and shake things up. You need to email me so we can get you on the podcast. Our podcast is all about everyday innovators. We stopped interviewing the experts with the books and the platforms because we want people like you and me and the people that we've had on there who are out there actually doing it. So if that's you, actually what you can do is go to our website. There's a form, a nomination form. You can nominate yourself or you can nominate someone else. Go do that. Yes, Mia, we need to schedule that. I know. We're going to get you on very soon. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Appreciate all of you.